Hi everyone, welcome to SIG Node weekly meeting Feb 20th, 2024. We have a few items on the agenda. Let's get started. So the first one is by Kevin and Maxim. It's about discuss configuration for pod log location.
Hi, yeah, I wasn't too sure if the person that posted it was here. Generally, this PR has been long going for a while. I think Murnal, you asked me to bring this up to SIG Node. The PR was pretty simple. It was adding a config for changing the location for logs. And I guess I'm not sure if if we can review it currently or whether or not we should actually go with a KEP. That was kind of why I wanted to bring it up. And then, yeah, I think Murnal, you had some thoughts on this also.
Yeah, so I think did we think about intersection? Is the goal to move it to a separate disk, or is it just changing the directory?
The issue was mostly about, let me actually look.
I can talk a little bit about that. So in my case, we have a highly locked down system and subset of directories is read-only, and we would benefit from being able to specify different target.
So I think Murnal's question was, for your target, does it live on the same file system or a separate file system entirely?
In my case, it's a same file system, but technically speaking, we can choose different disk as well.
Yeah, I think if we use a different disk, will the accounting work off the top? Kevin, do you remember? Because you're looking at the split file system.
I don't know if it will. I think that's something that might be important to look at, because I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it will work. I think you could fill up that disk without signaling disk pressure or anything.
Okay. So the simple thing that can work is just we allow changing the directory, and then the consumers will have to be aware, right? Like we'll make changes in Kubernetes itself, but any other log ingesting agents would then have to be configured to look at the new directory. I'm okay with it. Don, do you have any thoughts?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Don, we can. Yeah.
I also okay with that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think just this change is okay, right? If we worry about a different file system, we can figure that out later.
Well, I guess maybe the question is, we probably should have for documenting that in the website update, that this is not supported for this. We do not recommend putting this on a separate file system.
Yeah, because then we won't be able to account disk usage correctly.
Okay. I'll put that as a, yeah. So I guess, I know it's not a KEP, so we're okay with no KEP. And then I guess, I think the PR is pretty good. I haven't really found anything, so I don't know if we're okay with maybe trying to include it in 1.30.
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Okay. All right then. Thank you.
I have Francesco here. I have a question semi-related to this topic about because we talked about changing the paths of so basically changing the path of which are pretty much ingrained in the usage. I mean, for example, Verilog pods. So in this similar vein, I had a PR a while ago about changing optionally changing another path. about the pod resources socket, to be specific. And I was wondering if the SIG feels is generally okay to propose those kind of changes, because the question is, those paths are there for years now, and for the same basically reasoning that okay, a lot of other components need to be configured. So is the SIG generally okay with this kind of approach, or or is something that we need to evaluate on a case-by-case basis? I'm not sure. I'm explaining myself, but
I think my take is probably we need to evaluate on a case-by-case basis. I see this as in the future expanding to a use case where we can split out the logs to a separate disk. So this is like step one, and maybe in the future it becomes more useful that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Manu.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks. So Kevin, you have the next topic as well, which is KEP 4191 blocked on supervisor. Yeah,
I have a few. Yeah, unfortunately.
no worries.
This was just so for the split file system KEP, I had a change in cAdvisor, and I need a release of cAdvisor to finish out this KEP. So my hope is that we could get a release soon, especially before the enhancement freeze. I don't know. I think that there's only one person that I know of that can actually do that. So I don't know if it's possible to get that on the backlog.
I guess David isn't on the call, David Porter, but I'm not sure if anyone else can talk to it. Don, do you know if David might
I think Don, you're on mute.
Yeah.
So so let me take this action item and get back to SIG Node. So when do you think is the latest time we can get that release? So can I block you?
I mean, I have it vendored in a PR where I just have one change that I need to make. So once the release is there, ideally I can just use the new cAdvisor release for this. So the issue is it kind of blocks reviews or really test, like wrapping that up. So sooner is better. But
Okay, I take this one. Ask who can do this one. Since anyway we are trying to build, have more people can do the cAdvisor release. Maybe this is the new assignment, but I need the identifier owner. Yeah, get back to the community.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just think by the time the release hits, that's really what it needs. That's the enhancement freeze, or the code freeze. And that's what we call it. All right, thank you, Don.
So, thank you.
All right, thanks. Let's move on to the next topic, which is Lingyan and Jeff. They're looking for reviewers for in-place pod resize for C groups V2. So I think one thing I noticed on that PR is it's trying to modify memory.min, which is something we don't want to. We should only touch the knobs that are equivalent with V1 because we paused the memory queue as kept.
So can I ask, what's the reason that we don't want this memory minimum from SQL V2?
Yeah, because we basically ran into issues. I think Dikshita, if you have a summary somewhere that you can link to for Lingyan on why we paused that KEP, and so we don't want to set those values till we have a solution to move forward or unblock it again.
Sure, I'll do that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you.
But I think if you remove the min, the max stuff should be okay and should be reviewable.
Sure. I will communicate with the PR owner to maybe modify this. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so Adrian is he's not on the call. I think he's asking for reviews on container checkpointing. Kevin, I know you were looking at it, or maybe we can just assign someone to go review it.
I see an Adrian on the call.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right, didn't know. Adrian, go ahead.
I was able to make it, yeah. But basically, just what you said. After the discussion for the production readiness review, we adapted the cap to. It was mainly about missing tests for the beta graduation, and the pull request with the code now is there, and it has, at least from, if I understood everything correctly, it should have all the tests which were requested during the cap discussion. So this, from my point of view, this is ready for review. The changes are, it's pretty simple. It's just moving it to beta and adding tests for the things which were not tested during alpha.
And I think there were some comments around RBAC on the checkpoint endpoint. So
yeah, right. I also added that, so that we have a separate there's a separate label now to be able to have different rules on the checkpoint endpoint. This was also added.
okay.
But this needs to be reviewed if I did it correctly. I'm not 100% sure this is the right thing to do. I try to follow what the other endpoints are doing with special rules there, but it needs reviewers now.
Okay, all right. I guess we can now ask David or someone from the auth side to take a look. Maybe Tim, if you are familiar.
Yeah, sounds good.
And I think Mike Brown just linked to some comment. Mike, anything you want to? Right.
Yeah, just pointing out that the cryutine, where the stuff gets serialized, is actually Mike making a modification to support encryption by default. Something to look forward to in this feature.
Yes, yeah. So that's something Radostin is working on, and this is a very important thing. I also think that the images are encrypted, so that we have control who can do it from the Kubernetes side. But even if somebody can do it, the result is not readable by anybody without a corresponding keys, right? Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is one of the things I was worried about in a couple of our prior calls. It would be nice if this could fit it in before we finish the betas and go GA.
Yeah, so a bit background here. We looked at encryption on the OCI layer, if we should do it there, or on the crew on the low level layer. And the idea was we do it on the lowest layer so that the unencrypted data never hits the disk. So it's before it's written to the disk, it's encrypted. So that's why we try to do it at the lowest level possible and not write it to disk and then encrypt it later. So this was the motivation.
So you want us to inject that in the container runtimes then, and any additional encryption requirements on the request for the checkpoint?
We still are figuring it out. So we're still looking to get the pull request merged on the crew level, on the lowest level, and once we have that, we will work with the container runtimes engines to do. We have a couple of ideas, but we want to first have the encryption working on the lowest level, and because it's encryption, and we really try to be careful and have the correct people review it. It will take some time.
Okay. Thanks.
Right. Thanks. So I guess like Adrian, thanks. We can have folks start reviewing it and add comments there. Okay, I guess we can move to the next topic. Jace CRI container and pod stats. Are you on the call?
Hi, yes.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Yeah, so SIG Windows, we started noticing some of our HPA tests failing, and we started looking into it, and we noticed that the recent changes when we moved to Containerd 1.7, the recent changes in kubelet with the cry only stats was causing some issues. And this is because the usage nanocores was being calculated in kubelet previously and got moved down into container D. In kubelet, it was only being called every 10 seconds by the eviction manager. But now every single call to container D through the cry stats endpoint returns the calculation, of which can, if you make multiple calls at the same time, can end up as a 0 value or a very small value. And so this is only affecting Windows currently, but I think when this moves to beta, it would affect Linux as well. The reason it's only affecting Windows is because on Linux, the CAdvisor is filling in the value later on if it's a 0 value. So yeah, so I think there's a few different options here that we kind of discussed in the issue a little bit with Peter Hunt, but potentially, calculating that on the cry level, but having it like a cache level, or having kubelet continue to cache that and container D doesn't use it. So I didn't really have I didn't really know which direction to go here. So I was coming here to get some more eyes on it and get some feedback on which direction we should go.
Peter, did you have anything to add?
No, that's a good summary. Yeah, a couple of notes. So because we are including in the CRI response the timestamp, like caching it, having the value calculated in the CRI and then caching it and returning it, for that period until it's recalculated is absolutely an option. I think, yeah, there's like a handful of different options that we have available. I think it'll be worth sort of deciding as a SIG, like, do we want, because the CRI is the one that's like calculating the stats, do we want it to be the one responsible for defining that period? Or is that something the kubelet should be able to request? Like, I want this to be calculated every 10 seconds or something like that. Or should it be something that's calculated by the kubelet itself, like taking the CPU values and then periodically updating the usage over the period it cares about? So I think it just gets, I think most of this is just like, who do we want to be responsible for these things?
I think maybe doing it in the kubelet may be easiest, so the runtime can just surface it as is, and kubelet can decide how long it wants to cache it for.
That's true, though. I've actually just thought of something, which is that because the runtime is the one responsible for choosing when the stat is collected, it actually might be tricky in kubelet to normalize. Like the CRI could request it at some period and the kubelet could be requesting it at a different period, and they don't necessarily line up. So now, like right as you mentioned that, I'm kind of thinking maybe we do need it to be calculated in the CRI, because the CRI is the one that's responsible for choosing the period, given that it is returning a timestamp. Like if it was gathered live whenever the kubelet requested it, that would be one thing, but we can't promise that. Or we chose not to promise that.
I think I'll probably have to dig in deeper to make any suggestions here. I don't know if folks on the call have anything more to add.
Yeah, a little bit deeper, because obviously if we're collecting on a 1 second or some small time, but it takes an exit either before that happens, we would have to return all stats at that point. Would that be okay? It makes sense to talk about it a little bit more, right?
Yeah, but basically the stats are collected in the CRI at some period that it decides. And like I think Cryo has a configuration option, and that the kubelet requested at whatever frequency it needs the stats. And so the flexibility is in the CRI to choose sort of the frequency that they're actually collected at. But the kubelet will only be able to retrieve them when it lists all of the stats for all of the pods. because that's kind of the call that it uses.
Right, and we're not reporting to it what our current time frame is that we're configured to, right?
Well, the kubelet could figure it out because we send this timestamp of when the stat was collected, but we don't include the period in the CRI response.
Right. So if we either add the period or they can calculate it based on 2 events. Okay.
Yeah, and on Containerd currently, it's only calculated when a request comes in, so it's not done periodically. So we could potentially change that on Containerd side of things, but I think it was just ambiguous as far as how that call should be handled.
Yeah, I think that it was left intentionally vague in the CRI spec, but the inclusion of the timestamp, like it's similar to how CAdvisor, it's analogous to how CAdvisor does it, which is periodically on its own basis, and then returns a timestamp of whenever it actually did the collection, and the kubelet takes that into account. So, but I think the difference there is the kubelet can actually configure CAdvisor's period. So I think a solution that would actually be, is you could just have it collected periodically in Containerd, similar to how it is in Cryo. And then at least you wouldn't have this 0 problem because, it would be calculated. Like there would always be a value because the period would be long enough. But I'm happy to chat more on the issue when folks familiarize themselves more with it. I find myself leaning in a direction, but I'm happy to wait for more feedback before giving a decisive answer.
Yeah, it almost sounds like if we did want kubelet to manage it, we'd need a new configuration so that they could override that and use a default pattern that everybody's used to in a particular cloud. And then we'd have to modify the container runtimes to utilize that passed in parameter as an override of the config.
Might be tricky. I think. Yeah, also because it could just have it be configurable in the CRI, and then it's up to the admin to make sure that it is aligned with what you want.
Okay, it might make sense at least to report it when we do status of the runtime, so you know what the period is. Yeah, in kubelet code.
May I suggest, Peter, can you summarize all the 3 options you just mentioned here in the issue itself? Because I think that's what we discussed. We need a little bit more time to consider. Can you summarize what you just shared here to the issue?
Yep, exactly. And we will read and maybe then we can make better recommendations. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. We have the last item on the agenda, yet another stats issue with bids. Kevin.
Yeah, this is just awareness. I think it's been a long-standing issue, but I think Paco has been leading it. But we were finding that the process count stats I think the original issue was reporting it for the CRI stats provider that was returning 0 process count. I'm noticing it occurring in both Cryo and Containerd, and I think we're hoping for a fix on that. But I guess just wanted to. Guess it's been broken for like a year now, and I don't think there's been too many issues of people mentioning it. So I don't know how big of a deal it is, but it does seem like I cannot. Like the summary stats are not reporting the process count correctly. And it's pretty easy to reproduce. You can just bump up the summary end-to-end test and say return greater than 1 process count, and then you can reproduce the failure in the CI pretty easily. So it's just something I think I want to bring it up in case you have any issues related to that. And then maybe we might want to consider, I guess we should probably figure out, I don't know when it broke, but it might be worth maybe a potential cherry pick for it. Anyway,
So,
that's it.
sounds good. It looks like Paco has a PR to fix, which is being reviewed, right? So,
It's a whip one because I think he fixed it on the containerd side. I'm not clear why on the cryo side it's failing. Like the fix for cryo does not work. I think Peter and I were talking a little bit about it, but not quite sure the answer there.
Can you link the container defix? I'm not finding it.
It's in the agenda.
Oh, I see. So it's a fix in Kubernetes, but it fixes the containerd case.
Yeah, and that was kind of it. I think if I remember right, the change was actually falling back to cAdvisor, I think, for computing the processes, which may not be what we want for the CRI stats provider.
That is how it works now. Basically, you collect it in the CRI and then whatever values containerd has, if they're zeroed out in the CRI, are replaced. So that's actually correct. That will be changed with, right, sorry. Yeah. Values collected from CRI and then replaced with the value from cAdvisor in the CRI stats provider. That's what's being changed in the pod and container stats from CRI, like the CAP 2371. But that said, the consequence of overriding from cAdvisor should not be no stats. So I'll take a deeper look at this, or at least give it a review and try to figure out what the difference. I mean, it must be, the reason it doesn't work with cryo is it must be that the cAdvisor stats provider fix is a little bit different, which does look like it. So that might be an aspect of it.
All right, thank you, Peter.
right, we can look deeper and see if it's something to do with the cryo extension and cAdvisor. So if something needs to be fixed there for this one. All right. Thanks, folks. That brings us to the end of the agenda. Is there anything else that folks want to discuss? All right. Reminder, we are only 2 weeks away from code freeze. So please work on your enhancements and features and poke reviewers and approvers. So it gets merged in time. Thank you for joining. See you all next week. Bye.